Obviously, the one question is, everybody's asked me, why? I understand why Casey, why the boys, why your daughter.
Michael Wayne Jones was born on May 1, 1981, in the small town of Brattleboro, situated in Vermont, USA. While the identities of his parents remain unknown, it is evident that his family life was fraught with complexity and difficulty. From a tender age, Michael was a witness to the repeated physical and mental abuse between his parents, and he too was a victim of this mistreatment. These issues seem to be a tragic and enduring legacy, affecting both sides of his family. During Michael's early years, his father was incarcerated for reasons that are still unclear. This event deeply affected Michael, creating a profound sense of emptiness in his life. Seeking a fresh start, his mother remarried and had another son named Dana. Michael found some joy in having a sibling, but their home life remained far from ideal. His stepfather's inability to maintain steady employment placed the entire financial burden on his mother, who was forced to take on 2 jobs. Compounding their difficulties, Michael's stepfather exhibited aggressive behavior toward both him and Dana. The use of violent disciplinary methods created an environment of fear and oppression. If Michael arrived late to school or made a mistake, he was harshly punished, often locked in a shed and subjected to sexual abuse. Despite the harshness of his life, Michael showed a generous and protective nature. In such dire circumstances, he often took on the role of protecting Dana, sometimes enduring punishments meant for his brother to spare him the pain. This courageous and loving behavior forged a strong bond between the brothers, with Michael becoming a figure of admiration for Dana. The stepfather's control was so stringent that Michael was rarely allowed to interact with other children from school or the neighborhood. His mother, living in fear of her husband, was unable to confront or oppose him. This created an atmosphere of isolation, secrecy, and oppression within the household. Without any external support, Michael and Dana had to endure the ongoing abuse. The bleak atmosphere of their home did not go unnoticed by the neighbors, who began to suspect the presence of abuse. On one occasion, driven by desperation, Michael ran away from home. But Michael had no clear destination, so he was eventually found by the authorities. When questioned about his reasons for leaving, he shared the difficult story of his family life. However, he received no assistance regarding his situation. Despite his efforts to appear fine to those around him, Michael's true feelings were hidden beneath the surface. As he entered adolescence, his low self-esteem significantly affected him, leading to a depression that required medical treatment. The only respite from his pain was his high school. There, despite his introversion and loneliness, Michael felt somewhat at ease as responsibilities helped him forget his oppressive home life. He was fortunate to meet Dorothy, who owned a nearby business. She introduced him to her daughter, whose name remains unknown. Michael formed a friendship with the girl, which eventually turned into an on-and-off relationship. This special connection allowed Michael to reveal a kind, affectionate, and protective side of himself. Dorothy was delighted by this new facet of Michael, but was also concerned. He always seemed on edge when it was time to go home. Although Dorothy's daughter often visited him, Michael did everything he could to keep her away from his house. With so many signs, Dorothy finally decided to delve deeper in her conversations with Michael. He then confided in her about his constant worry for his mother and brother's well-being. This allowed her to glimpse the emotional burden and anguish he carried. Their friendship provided Michael with a temporary respite from his difficulties, a space where he could express his feelings. After high school, Michael made a life-changing decision by joining the United States Navy. This marked the beginning of a new chapter, providing him with a clear purpose within a highly structured environment. As he developed a deep love and attachment for the Navy, Michael realized how right his choice had been. This sense of well-being was largely due to the new friendships he formed with his fellow servicemen. Despite occasionally drinking, he always showed up for work and proved to be a calm and relaxed individual. At the time, Michael was dating a fellow service member, whose name has been kept confidential. However, it became clear that the relationship was imbalanced, as she was physically abusive. This revived old shadows of his family environment. When his relapse into depression became evident, he decided to leave her. He then focused on excelling in his career, which included undergoing additional training to provide medical care in combat situations. This earned him an assignment with the Marines in a medical role. During this period, Michael met a young woman named Sarah. They fell in love and eventually got married. Following their marriage, Michael left the Marines to focus on his new role as a husband. Sarah played a crucial role in Michael's life, helping to keep him on the right path. Together, they welcomed 3 children, and Michael dedicated himself to being a good father, always striving to provide them with the best upbringing possible. Although Sarah took the lead in many decisions, Michael consistently supported her choices. Around 2011, Sarah found a job in Central Florida, specifically in Orange County, and the family relocated there. She worked at Mount Dora Animal Hospital, managed by Beau Delaporte. As weeks went by and Michael struggled to find a job, Sarah persuaded Beau to hire him, recognizing his work experience. Michael quickly adapted to his new responsibilities and demonstrated remarkable dedication. He always exuded joy, and it was evident to everyone that he loved his work, caring for animals and attending to their owners. His positive attitude made him highly sought after, with pet owners preferring his services. His employers grew very fond of him, especially Beau, who, beyond their professional relationship, extended his friendship and trust to Michael. Beau even began to delegate some management responsibilities of the animal hospital to him. Everything was going smoothly, and in 2014, Beau hired a new veterinary technician, Casey. Born on December 23, 1986, in the city of Ossian, Indiana, Casey was the second daughter of Nickley and David. Her siblings were Sarah and Brandy. From a young age, Casey was undoubtedly the heart of her home, her overflowing energy lifting everyone's spirits, even beyond her family. As she grew, Casey showed great love for others, driven by a special connection to her spirituality. No matter the challenges, her strength lay in her faith and personal values. During her time at high school, Casey met Richard. Initially, their attraction was mutual. However, after dating for a few weeks, Richard began to notice certain behaviors in her. Despite her kind side, Casey also exhibited jealousy and possessiveness. Her insecurity led to an abusive side, expressed through words and actions. Nonetheless, Richard persisted, and with patience and calm, they married after completing their studies. Over time, Casey's mother decided to move to Florida, and shortly after, Sarah and Brandy followed her. Given Casey's close relationship with her family, she and Richard also relocated to the same state in 2009. As they settled in, Casey found occasional jobs as a transporter and sometimes worked as a dog groomer while learning the trade of a veterinary technician. During this period, the couple welcomed their first child, Cameron, and their happiness was evident. Cassie showed immense maternal devotion, making Cameron's well-being her top priority. A few years later, their joy grew even more with the birth of their second child, Preston. The children thrived in an ideal environment, filled with laughter and the loving care of their parents. As Casey advanced in her veterinary technician career, she found a job at an animal clinic where she met Michael, who had become Beau's right-hand man. From the beginning, Michael and Casey got along exceptionally well, but Beau and his wife sensed that their apparent friendship hinted at something more. This attraction, despite being inappropriate given the circumstances, was undeniable for Michael, even at the risk of being discovered by Sarah. The inappropriate attraction affected Michael's focus at work, leading to a decline in his performance, although he was always eager to meet Casey's needs and requests. She reciprocated his attention, and it wasn't long before they embarked on an affair. Eventually, both decided to divorce their respective spouses. Sarah gained custody of their 3 children and moved to Jacksonville, while Casey and Richard agreed on shared custody with fixed schedules that Casey strictly adhered to. She took responsibility for transporting Cameron and Preston, diligently fulfilling her parental duties. Meanwhile, Beau grew increasingly frustrated with Michael's declining performance. Additionally, Michael made inappropriate advances toward other clinic employees. When Michael requested leave to travel to his hometown, claiming his mother's death, Beau later discovered it was a ruse for a beach vacation. This betrayal led Beau to terminate Michael's employment. In retaliation, Michael broke into the clinic, stealing money, computer equipment, and even a weapon. Beau identified Michael as the culprit and reported him to the police. With Casey's help, Michael fled to New Mexico but was eventually captured and brought to justice. However, after a brief stint in prison, he was released. Despite everything, Casey's trust in Michael remained unshaken. They soon moved in together, and Michael took on the role of stepfather to Cameron and Preston. By 2017, around Halloween, Michael and Casey finally tied the knot and moved into a 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom trailer. Despite the limited space, the modest rent made them feel fortunate to have each other. That same year, they welcomed their first daughter, Mercali, followed by Ayanna the next year. While Michael worked as a construction laborer to support their 4 children, Casey took pride in her role as a homemaker. She cherished every stage of her children's growth and sought ways to preserve those unique moments. This led her to create a YouTube channel to share special milestones of their family. On the surface, their life seemed idyllic, with Michael exuding calmness and Casey's laughter often heard in the background of their videos. However, behind closed doors, the couple frequently clashed, and their arguments had become a constant issue. Distrustful of Michael, Casey made a habit of checking his phone. She also grew suspicious whenever he worked long hours. On the night of July 10, 2019, while the children slept, a heated argument erupted between them. The trigger was Casey's discovery of a supposed infidelity on Michael's phone. The confrontation quickly escalated from verbal to physical. In a fit of rage, Casey grabbed a baseball bat and shoved Michael with it. Overcome with anger, Michael managed to wrest the bat from her and, in a blind fury, struck her repeatedly, ultimately killing her. Michael then placed Casey's body in a plastic bag and stored it in a closet. He attempted to clean up the scene as best as he could. The next morning, he decided to take further steps to avoid the children discovering what had happened. He loaded her remains into his car. In the following days, to avoid suspicion, Michael continued to share content on Casey's social media accounts. On July 26th, pretending to be Casey, he texted Richard asking him to take care of Preston and Cameron. He did the same with Casey's mother, instructing her to look after Mercali and Ayanna. When Richard came to pick up Cameron and Preston, He found Casey's absence strange and voiced his concerns to Michael, who brushed it off, saying she had left town for a few days. Casey's mother had a similar reaction when she came for Mercalli and Ayanna. That same day, Michael called Sarah, telling her that he was separating from Casey and needed to see his children while she worked. Later, he picked them up and took them to his residence. During the drive, the children noticed a foul odor in the car, similar to rotting meat. For 2 weeks, Michael continued to drive between his home and Sarah's residence to visit his children, all while Casey's lifeless body remained in the car. As days passed without any word from her daughter, Casey's mother began to sense that something was wrong. On August 10th, Richard returned Cameron and Preston to Michael, and this time, Casey's absence caused him much greater concern. During their brief conversation, Michael apologized for being the cause of their divorce and acknowledged the challenges Richard had faced during his time with Casey. As the new school year approached, Michael realized that the absence of the children and Casey would raise questions from the elementary school staff. One night, on an unspecified date, he dragged Cameron out of bed and suffocated him, then placed his body in a suitcase. The next morning, he did the same with Preston, this time putting the body in a garbage bag. A few days later, the trailer park owner served Michael an eviction notice, giving him a maximum of 2 weeks to leave. Amid this grim situation, Michael went to pick up Mercalli and Ayanna. When Casey's mother saw him again, still without Casey, she had a nervous breakdown. Her mind was fixated on one question: where was her daughter? As Michael drove with the girls, he was suddenly overwhelmed with guilt. He felt he had no choice but to turn himself in at a police station. However, after lingering at the entrance for a while, he changed his mind and drove back home. Once there, he filled the bathtub with water and drowned Mercalli and Ayanna. After they stopped breathing, he placed their bodies in a plastic container. By early September, the approach of Hurricane Orion led to a state of emergency being declared in Florida. Many sought refuge in public shelters to protect themselves from the impending disaster. This situation provided Michael an opportunity to flee with the 5 bodies. He loaded them into his truck and drove north, planning to stay with Sarah and his children. Despite the ongoing emergency in Florida, Sarah never saw Michael call his wife or inquire about the children. This made her uneasy, but aware of the marital issues, she chose not to ask questions. After the hurricane passed, Michael's neighbors reported a foul smell coming from the trailer to the property owner. Assuming the Jones family had already left, the owner first peeked through the windows and then entered the trailer. Aside from the furniture and personal belongings, nothing seemed amiss, but the stench was unbearable. By this time, Casey's, desperate to find an explanation for her daughter's absence, speculated that Michael might be in trouble with the law again and was hiding. She concluded that her daughter might be in hiding for safety reasons, but instead of staying idle, she contacted the sheriff's office to request a welfare check on Casey. When the officers conducted the welfare check, they found the house empty and seemingly recently cleaned. However, the presence of cleaning supplies near the door contrasted with the persistent smell of decomposition. Despite this, the property owner arrived and asked the officers to leave. Meanwhile, with the body still in his vehicle, Michael left Sarah's house and drove across the state border into Georgia. There, near a wooded area, he disposed of Cameron, Preston, Mercalli, and Ayanna. While driving on the highway and checking his GPS, Michael lost control of his vehicle and crashed. Surprisingly, he emerged unscathed, but the vehicle was completely wrecked. Police officers quickly arrived at the scene and immediately noticed the terrible odor coming from the truck. When they opened the suitcase, they were met with a horrifying sight: Casey's remains. There, on the roadside and under the shocked gaze of the authorities, Michael confessed in detail to his gruesome actions, including the location of the children. Consequently, he was taken into custody. Upon hearing the news, Casey's family felt as though their world had collapsed. In a state of shock, they could not stop asking themselves how a human being could inflict so much harm on others, especially on babies. For the first time in her life, Sarah experienced hatred towards someone, as she later stated. However, the thought that Casey might have witnessed her children's deaths caused her the most pain. Based on the findings and armed with a search warrant, the agents returned to Casey's residence. Upon entering, besides the smell, they noticed a reddish stain on the carpet. They prepared to collect evidence at the scene. Meanwhile, the autopsies were being performed. According to the forensic report, Cameron had a fractured jaw but no other visible signs of trauma. However, a towel was found in his mouth. Preston had a noose around his neck. Mercalli and Ayanna were found together in a small plastic bag containing a baby bottle labeled Ayanna and a pair of pink sandals. Both had died by drowning. As for Casey, there was crushing on the front of her skull and face, indicating a blow with a blunt object, but no other traumas were found on her body. Michael agreed to be interviewed by the officers, and during the process he remained calm and precise in his responses, making no attempt to deceive the agents. On the contrary, Michael thanked the officers for capturing him, stating that there was nothing more he could do given the circumstances. Calmly, he then recounted the events chronologically, from the night of the fight with Casey to his subsequent arrest. When asked about the motive behind his actions, Michael responded that everything had accumulated in his life to the point where it seemed like the best and only way out. Beyond the logical impact of such a tragedy on everyone involved, it was particularly hard and cruel for Sarah to accept that her own children had been exposed to and lived with a man like Michael. Understandably, after learning the facts, Sarah suffered from mental health issues. Michael was charged with second-degree murder for Casey's death and 4 additional counts of first-degree premeditated murder for the deaths of the children. He pleaded guilty. This plea avoided a trial, moving the case directly to the sentencing phase. In this phase, a jury of 12 people had to decide between life imprisonment or the death penalty. As part of their strategy, the defense focused on Michael's difficult childhood and his mental health issues, presenting various psychological disorders as mitigating factors. However, the state prosecutors argued that the undeniable brutality of the case warranted the death penalty. In January 2023, the jury unanimously recommended the death penalty in accordance with state law. During a brief 9-minute hearing, the judge sentenced Michael for his crimes. Additionally, he was given life without parole for Casey's murder. Michael's lawyer immediately filed the necessary paperwork to appeal the sentence. Despite this last effort on Friday, April 28, 2023, the judge upheld the previous sentence. Prosecutors expressed their satisfaction with the justice served for the victims' families. As he awaits execution, Michael remains behind bars. Thanks for tuning in to Unreal True Crime. If you're intrigued by mysteries from around the world, check out our new channel, Latin Crimes, where we dive into the gripping true crime stories of Latin America. Don't miss out. Subscribe now for more thrilling investigations.